The time is here, people. What time, you might be wondering? It's time for us to say goodbye to the era of fax machines. Gone are those days in light of the recent changes in regulations brought by Ofcom, the UK's main regulatory body for everything related to communication. None of us knew this would happen so quickly, but it's happening, and you bet we're here to tell you everything about this decision. First up, welcome to the new age. Fax machines finally face their death sentence. Who would have ever thought that we would stay alive to see the day when offices will no longer be filled with the whirring sound of those fax machines receiving and sending all those important papers? That day has come, and from the looks of it, it's going to be a pretty permanent decision. In fact, you better be prepared to see fax machines collecting dust on cramped shelves. Maybe a few years down the road, we'll see them as remnants of the past in curated museum collections. At this point, none of us are really surprised by how brutal technology's progress can be. For certain better things, we have to let go of old ones. Unfortunately, that's the fate the fax has to face as well. Now for the official announcement made by Ofcom about removing the fax. Ofcom killed it. No, seriously, Ofcom killed the fax machine legacy, and it made its final and official announcement on Tuesday when it declared the end of all fax services. Well, you can't really blame Ofcom because the enterprise was actually obligated to back the government's decision to formally put an end to all fax services. If you didn't know, under the Universal Service Orders, USO, most recent law, fax machines and their services are no longer a requirement anywhere. This shocking change was introduced so that phone services, instead of fax services, are equally distributed and made available to all British citizens. We know your immediate reaction would be, well, phone services are already available to all of the UK. The answer to that is both yes and no, because in some areas of the UK, phone services are more expensive than others, and fax machines are more frequently used. Basically, by removing the existence of fax machines, everyone has to utilize phone services, and as a result, the government will be making them more accessible and affordable. Effective from 1st October 2022, the Electronic Communications Order 2003 was amended by the UK government to eradicate all fax services from the USO. Up next, how the fax, a machine of great use, turned into something so easily disposable. That's the thing with technology. We get so used to these devices and then something better comes along and we have to say goodbye to the old ones. And even though it's pretty recurring at this point, it takes us by surprise whenever we see it happen again. It's pretty much the case here as well. Back in the 1980s and 90s, we used to think about the world of fax machines. They were such lifesavers. They swooped in to save the day by letting us send important documents that would otherwise have taken a long time to send if we had to send them by post. But there's always a replacement on the horizon. Now, we've got the internet and better systems of organization. Even though it hurts to admit, fax machines aren't so convenient to use anymore. We know how hard it is to let go, but as much as the fax was useful long ago, it's not the same anymore. What's more, the decision wasn't made in haste. For the old-timers, this drastic decision would most definitely be difficult on the heart, but it is worth mentioning that it wasn't taken in the blink of an eye. DCMS staff took their time in carrying out investigations within different sectors of the government to assess the importance of fax services. The tourism, healthcare, and legal industries proved that the use of fax machines was very scarce, and experiments were being carried out to come up with alternative systems. Here's to hoping the new alternative systems are affordable and do not aid in the inflation that's currently taking the UK by storm. Fingers crossed, folks. Moving on, Ofcom offered to listen to those who felt too strongly about the fax's removal. It's no surprise there are people actually putting up a fight to keep the fax machine legacy alive. You would probably expect that from Britishers, out of all people, as they are famous for their love and admiration for vintage and old traditions. Ofcom has been kind and considerate towards such old souls, as they have offered an opportunity to those who disagree with this new legislation to challenge their decision. However, the old-timers were easily outweighed, as only 13 responses were communicated in 2 months, and out of those, 9 responses agreed with the removal decision. That must be tough for the ancient technology lovers. What's more, in response to 2 respondents who voted for the fax machine to stay in service, Ofcom argued that the fax system would still be used in certain sectors, like travel, medical, and legal. Let's take a look at why Ofcom insists on the finality of its decision. Ofcom has been pretty adamant about its decision to omit fax services from the general communicational sphere. Their takes are simple. There's a plethora of other alternative services, such as emails and free online communication platforms. Keeping that in mind, faxing is not just outdated, but also unnecessarily takes up space under the USO. Let's not forget the additional cost of paper and machine space. Coming up, does this mean it's time to bid the fax machine farewell? It's going to be hard to imagine British offices without this used to be very important devices of communication. We know it's getting too sentimental here, but well, that's attachment issues for you people, even if they're about a machine that's about to be a relic of the past. After all that we've shared regarding Ofcom and its decision, there's no denying that this is final. It's going to happen. Some Some of you might want to hold on to your fax machines, and we don't blame you for that. These things evoke strong emotions in us, and goodbyes are always hard. Before we decide if this goodbye is final, let's go over a few more details about the fax machine. Not to mention all the ways the facsimile was so good for us. The fax has a history, and we won't forget it so easily. It became a pretty common thing to see inside offices, and we were so used to that whirring sound, even if it got on our nerves. What's more, they were pretty helpful devices in establishing a source of connection between systems that were usually deemed incompatible. And there's no denying that sending a fax was much safer because since it's a very isolated system of communication, it was next to impossible to manipulate or corrupt the data being sent. Now for Michael Jordan's famous fax from 1995. Let's interrupt for a moment and talk about a very iconic fax moment from the past. It would be pretty disappointing if we didn't bring this up, so now let's have a ride down memory lane. There's a lot of legendary stuff when it comes to sports, but nothing quite beats how Michael Jordan, the world-famous basketball player, sent a fax with the message, "I'm back," typed on the document to announce that he had decided to come back from retirement. You had to be there to witness this moment in history. Up next, how the machine's use became limited. We already covered how the machine's use became limited because of how we had faster services on our hands now. The switch in systems is basically what kicked the fax to the curb, and when times change, you've got to move along with them as well. In that light, it didn't make sense to stick to something that was no longer of use to us. Even though the fax was still under use in multiple hospitals, it's better to transition to systems that are being used everywhere because it makes the entire thing run smoother. At some point, these machines stopped being the gold standard. What's more, you could easily send the wrong document through the fax, and there would be no way for you to revert that. Finally, to answer the question, is this goodbye final? We guess it's time to open that can of dreaded worms. The big question, is it finally the time to say goodbye to the fax? Well, with all that we've shared with you, it looks like Ofcom's pretty adamant about its decision, and we won't be seeing a reversal anytime soon. Also, consider how they didn't really find any good pointers in the case that was presented in defense of keeping the fax around. Like it or not, we've got much better devices, and it's just inconvenient to keep something around only for nostalgia's sake. With that, let's bid adieu to all the fax machines that won't be making that whirring sound in our offices anymore. That's a wrap for this video. What's your take on the official removal of the fax from offices? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.